Okay, hey guys. Um, so I've been trying to do this experiment of writing a blog, and I realized that I'm actually probably better talking than writing, and so I figured, why don't I just make some videos? Um, but this is the first time I'm doing this video. I wrote out a little bit of like what I want to talk about, but I'm trying to, just have a conversation or a one-way conversation instead of reading a script. But I still might look at the screen and break eye contact with this little green light that tells me that I'm talking to whoever I'm talking to. Okay, so um, this topic that I want to talk about is I'm calling it using spiritual growth, or sorry, using your taxes or using budgeting or your personal finances for spiritual growth. Um, and I literally mean like, how can you use doing your taxes or something super shitty for spiritual growth? So, um, the main headline, like spiritual growth, when we think of it, when we think of like working on ourselves or whatever, it's like going to therapy, going to retreats, going to doing ayahuasca, doing all of these things. And, these like intense experiences, you might like cry in front of your therapist or whatever. But actual spiritual growth, and I've heard this from like many, many people, but I'm feeling it for myself, is about overcoming your demons. So it's about going back to experiences that used to trigger you and getting to a place where those same things don't trigger you anymore. And so you use all of the things like, the ayahuasca retreat or the meditation retreat or therapy to get you to the point where then you can go back to this thing that used to trigger you, whether it's being around a person, being in a bad part of town, or just like facing something that you hate doing, and you can actually go back to that thing. And because of whatever you got out of your spiritual journey, your ayahuasca retreat, or whatever it is, your meditation retreat, you can now actually face that thing. But you have to actually go and face the thing. Like, you actually have to go and try to face the demon. It doesn't just work if you keep going from retreat to retreat to like meditation thing to meditation thing. And so, I recently saw this Instagram post from this guy. I think his name is David Diane Fisher. If I was writing this, I'd link. I really like his post, but he was basically talking about, where the actual spiritual growth comes from. So for me personally, I've been spending the last, I think it's like almost a month now, bit by bit, trying to do my budgeting, finances, taxes, etc. And even though that is like the most boring, mind-numbing thing at a laptop, for me, it's actually been spiritual growth. Like, I actually feel myself changing as a person by doing it. So let me give you a little bit of context of like why this is. And maybe, saying this in hopes that maybe for you, you'll be able to find something that's like this for you. So I would say like probably most of my close friends who is probably who's watching this know this about me. I like totally struggle with all things financial, like my taxes, balancing a budget, looking at my bank account freaks me out, like, or used to really freak me out. It made me feel uncomfortable. Like, I would have to get ready to look at my bank account. And I just lived my life, luckily, knock on wood, being like, okay, I just need to make more money than I spend and close my eyes and hope for the best. And I've luckily, for the most part, not spent on a bunch of random stuff, so it's kind of like worked out. This was also true for the company I ran, where I was scared to look at our burn rate, and true for my Burning Man camp that I ran. It was so bad that and I just like to be vulnerable with people because I feel like there's probably other people out this. I was 8 years behind on taxes. Now I'm still 2 years behind on taxes, but like that was a fuckload of a difference for me. And so like when I would eventually do these tasks, like when it was time to face my taxes, even just open the bank account, I would literally brew a pot of coffee, and I was smoking, I'd buy a pack of cigarettes. I would procrastinate all day until 1 a.m. And then I'd be like kind of like rocking back and forth. And then I would stay up till 7 a.m. to finish whatever the thing was. And then when I was done, after sleeping, like you could bet your ass I'd be like, well, now I need to party because like I did this super hard thing for me. I looked at my taxes. Now I need to go drink, or like whiskey sodas for Josh. I need to like go out till 6 a.m. And so you can see how like that would just leave me into having this like chaotic week, or chaotic 2 weeks over this thing. And I had all kinds of rationalizations about this. I was like, I'm not a money person. I'm not good at looking at spreadsheets. That stuff is beneath me. Like you hire an accountant. You don't actually look at this stuff yourself. There were all these things that I would these stories that I would tell myself, that would make me feel better about having these fears. And the irony is, like, I'm actually really good at making other people money. I'm really good at spreadsheets when it's not about like my personal finances, or if it's like a business that I'm consulting for. It's just when it comes to me that I have all these fears. So let me talk about like all of the spiritual work stuff that I did. So like first from like the Western, and skip this if you want. This I'm going over this for like people who have never been to therapy or never done somatics, but from like the Western psychology approach, like I call it like using my mind center, right? Like all of the reflection and like going to therapy about this, it, like helped me reach this reality, which is like money was a taboo subject in my family. The narrative of my adolescence, the narrative of like how I grew up, is that and I say story because like I think these are all stories we tell ourselves, but it's like we were seemingly very wealthy. My parents bought fancy cars. We had a nice house, and then in 2001, the stock market crashed, the dot-com boom burst, and then all of a sudden we weren't anymore. And so like within 1 week, the whole attitude at my, the house I grew up in my parents' house changed. Like there's, like my family uses this language, like we almost made it, but now we failed. So then it's like, so are we losers now? So there's always this like, when we almost made it, or we were making it. And making it in my family did not mean that you had a nice house or nice car, which, my parents still have the nice house, nice car. It meant having like $20 million or $50 million, like an obscene standard that until I realized recently that no one else actually thinks about that, or very few people think about that, led me to have just like a fuckload of life dissatisfaction, because the whole time I'm living my life, I'm like, well, I don't have $50 million. I haven't made it. I'm never gonna make it. And so like because of that roller coaster for my family, and I actually think that going through this, and my dad will definitely say that like going through having this experience changed him in the best way possible. But money became, like, especially as I was in high school, like the biggest taboo topic. My parents never wanted to talk about it. If I brought up things like how do you invest or mortgages or whatever, I'd get like scolded, or like someone would have to walk out of the room and be like, I can't talk about this. I can't talk about this. I'd hear my parents argue about the house all the time. How could they afford the house? Should they sell the house? Taxes were this like no topic. And so like for me, it was always subconsciously, I wasn't even conscious of this, but like if you participate in these things, some big unexpected thing could happen and bite you in the ass. And so it was better to just like not look at my bank account, or not open the mail, because like in that envelope could be, like you owe like you have some toll and you owe now like $3,000. And so like it was literally the boogie monster for me. And in my extended family, there were also like, just like money's like a big deal. Like people talk about money all the time. If you have money, you're happy. If you don't have money, you're not happy. And which I no longer believe is true, for what it's worth. So that's like kind of where I got to from like years of therapy. And sorry for the ding you just heard. I got a text message. But then more recently, I've gotten into somatics or body work, and reached the same thing from a different path. And so I think this is what's really neat about spiritual work or self or personal growth or whatever, is that you can get to this stuff through different paths. So I recently, in the last couple of years, encountered this idea of chakras. For if you don't know what a chakra is, you have these energy centers. There's 7 of them at different points in your body. So the root chakra is at the very bottom of your torso, going to your feet, and the crown chakra is at the top of your head. And then you have these other. So you have your sacral chakra, which is like below your belly button. You have your solar plexus, which is all about willpower and energy. You have your heart chakra, you have your throat chakra, and you have your third eye chakra, which is like all about the mind. And each chakra, what's interesting, can be impacted by either physical ailments or emotional ailments or mental ailments, or vice versa. There's this book that's really well known, everyone talks about. It's called like the Body Keeps the Score, and it's basically the same concept. So like I would have thought 3 years ago, 4 years ago, that this is totally bullshit. But when I was working my last job at Google, I had a ton of pain in my pelvic floor area. Basically, TMI, like everything below the waist hurt. And I thought it was prostate cancer. It was really freaky. And I couldn't sleep. I would just have I'd have to pee 20 times a night. And turns out the same area is called your sacral chakra. And the sacral chakra is also blocked when you don't feel like when your creativity is blocked, when you can't express yourself emotionally, when you can't express your creativity, when you don't feel sexually free. It's like all kind of blocks that stuff. And this lack of creative freedom, or the inability to be myself, is something that I felt at my job quite often. And so like as soon as I left my job, my sacral chakra pain went away significantly. Now you can also hurt your sacral chakra by sitting a lot. And so it works in reverse. So if you sit a lot and then you hurt that area, your creativity or your self-expression will also be blocked, because you're constantly going to be in pain. And I'm quite certain that if I had stayed in that job or in a place where I couldn't express myself, I probably would have developed prostate cancer, with like 10 years later. And this happens all. There's like stories of this all the time where someone literally leaves their job and their cancer goes away. So I recently read this book called The Law of One that I'm not going to get into because it's like pretty esoteric and out there, but I really like it. And it talks about the importance of unblocking all your chakras. If you've seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, this kid's cartoon show, basically if you unblock all your chakras, like you literally can receive energy from the universe. You're just like totally in flow. You're more alert, aware, creative, like all of these things, are easier for you. So for me, from using that framework, I've actually always had, I realized, a really strong set of upper chakras. Like it's really easy for me to have a vision or to use my mind. It's easier for me to communicate my opinion or talk. That's what I'm talking right now. My heart is like more open, but not as strong as these ones. And then my lower chakras, like my sacral chakra, my solar plexus, my body has been totally neglected my whole life. I've never felt good in my physical body. I've never played sports. I've always been bad at sports. I've never liked nature. I'm not plugged into my senses. I've literally, and I still feel this sometimes, like I'm an alien. Like I don't act like I'm not actually from planet Earth. And so like when you actually live like that and believe that or feel that subconsciously, like that's not okay with your body. Your body starts fucking with you about it. So I would have all this physical pain, which I still am getting over, but like lethargy, the sacral chakra stuff I talked about, just tired all the time. And because I have this like strong mind, my brain learned to ignore all these feelings. So I ignore them, or use a goal to not think about it, or use alcohol or caffeine or drugs or whatever to ignore this feeling. But whenever I would meditate and just sit, like this is why it was so hard for me to meditate and to get into it, I would feel immense pain in my body. I'd be like, holy shit, my whole body hurts all over. And so so now I feel this like I want to center all of these things. Like I want to kind of like have everything be in balance. And so because not for some like crazy I'm gonna go to heaven idea, but because I, I believe I will feel better. I'll have more energy. I'll feel more creative. I feel like like doing work will be easier. I'll be better in relationships, like all of these things. And so, how do I open up the lower chakras? Well, um, it's like focus on grounding. So, grounding is like literally can be walking barefoot, going in nature, calming yourself down, also working out, also doing things in the physical reality, like focusing on my senses, focusing on nice things to touch, focusing on, like giving someone a hug. Like all of these things are sort of like in your lower chakras. And so one of these areas that is tied to your root chakra is about safety and security. So if you don't feel safe or secure, your root chakra will be out of balance. You're not going to be able to use your body. You're going to feel tired, and literally, like you can think about it as like your brain is you're going to be spending all of this effort thinking about your lack of safety. And so like how do you, and I got this from the Law of One, you need to have your head around, you need to like understand your worldly needs. You need to understand like what it costs to maintain your body, and do you have it, like are you spending appropriately, and like are you earning enough money, because you need to support this, like you need to support your body. And so sorry, I'm rereading the notes that I wrote. And so like without that, so because I've been scared to look at this stuff, I've always just had this feeling of lack of safety, even though I've been fine. And this is like the trick, like I've actually been totally fine. Like I've never actually had any issues in this stuff, but like I have this constant gnawing in the back of my head, like I'm gonna get in trouble, something bad's gonna happen to me financially. I'm still feeling this until I finish my taxes. Like I'll still be feeling this way for a while, and it's constant. It's 24/7, and so like you can imagine that I'm just constantly feeling ungrounded because of this thing. So now, what have I been doing? So I just talked about like the mind answer, which is like I've been scared to do my finances because of experiences I had growing up in stuff from like just with the influences I had growing up, and I think that's true, but that's in other words, that's no longer true. I'm not in that situation anymore, and that's kind of what you get from therapy. And then in my body, noticing that I actually feel really ungrounded all the time, and whenever I think about anything having to do with finances, I feel even more ungrounded. I feel even more like I need to escape. So facing my demons. So I have this favorite shirt that I'm not wearing right now, but it's a Joseph Campbell quote. It says, "The cave you fear holds the treasure you seek," which is basically like whatever you're afraid of is where you will have the most growth. So I wanted to, so over the last 2 years, it took me 2 years to get to the point, 2 years to get to the point where I am now, where I had to quit stimulants. I, got off various substances I was doing on the weekends. I started working out, started running, worked through energy. I developed meditation practices. I developed ways to calm myself. I trained to be an internal family systems coach. So I even trained in therapy myself. And so years of the therapy taught me to recognize where these fears were coming from, and see that even though they're very real for me, I'm not actually in danger. Even though I can kind of undo the trigger. And then all of the body-based stuff helped me get more grounded in these other ways, like working out, meditating, going outside more, etc. And so with all of that stuff, now I'm really proud of myself, because I could finally face my bank account. I wanted to go through, so I'm not earning any money right now. I'm trying different experiments for myself. So I'm burning through my savings. And I'm doing that because I want to forge a new career path that I feel really excited about. And so I just haven't been looking at my bank account. I haven't been really budgeting. It's not smart. And so it took me 2 to 3 weeks now, where I wanted to look at all of my expenses and categorize them, and then figure out what's going into what, and then finally at the end of that also do my taxes. And but so I've been chipping away at it finally, but I've been doing it without coffee, without cigarettes, without drinking, without any all-nighters. I'm just doing it at my laptop, and then I go home afterwards, and it's not a big deal anymore. And so this thing that used to be so triggering for me is now kind of just like a tiny bug in my apartment. It still bothers me. I'm not saying I'm cured, but I can deal with it. It has gotten easier and easier and easier. And as I'm going through this process of now facing something that's hard for me, I can literally feel my brain rewiring. Like I can feel that there's this monster that's lived up here rent free that is like, you better do your budget, you better do your taxes, blah blah, and then all the negative self-talk. You suck at this stuff. You're such a basket case. Like all these like really mean things about myself. They're just shrinking. They're shrinking more and more and more. And then I can feel that I have extra energy that was going into that process all the time, 24/7, is now freed up. This monster that I've had literally since I was probably 15 years old is now shrinking. It's like getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And so I think that's what healing is to me. I wasn't in a monastery, and this time I've been like, maybe I should go to a monastery, maybe I should go to a retreat. But I was on my laptop doing something I've done before, but from a completely different perspective, like from a completely different energy. Instead of crying with dread, instead of freaking out, instead of like literally shaking, I'm smiling because I'm like conquering a demon. I'm like, oh my God, I'm literally defeating something. And I know that I'm less likely to get sick. I'm less likely to get cancer. I'm more likely to be creative. And I think that's why these paths, that's why therapy is important, useful. I don't say important. That's what, it's up to you if it's important. That's why therapy is useful. That's why meditation is useful. That's why working out is useful. All of these practices, and going on retreats too, like give you the ability to face these triggers. But then you need to go face them. You need to go face the demons, and you will need to face them multiple times. So what does that mean for you? Because I always like to, hopefully anything that I talk about is useful for someone else and not just me. So I've realized that, and sorry, I keep getting texts that I don't know how to put do not disturb on my phone on. But anyway, I've realized that all of the stuff, whether it's like therapy, meditation, acupuncture, breath work, etc., it's all about helping your mind, heart, and body to be less activated, to see things more clearly. But with that clarity, you want to look at the mousetrap that you're getting caught in, the thing that triggers you, the thing that you're afraid of, and you want to notice that you're afraid of it, and you want to undo the string of the mousetrap. And then you want to face those same things. It could be a person you don't like talking to, it could be an experience you don't like having, and it's going to take multiple times. But notice how bit by bit you will start to be able to face it more and more. If you're doing these other practices on the side, you can't just like go and face your fear alone. You have to be doing this other stuff on the side to help you work through it. Ram Dass, one of my favorite, he's dead now, but has amazing talks. He talks about this, tells a story about a woman in one of his classes or retreats who was like, Ram Dass, like, I don't have time to grow spiritually. I have kids. I don't have time to go to a monastery. And he was like, your children are your spiritual work. And I think I finally get that now, which is like everything in your life, moments where you get frustrated, life decisions you're afraid to make, the times where you just shut down or close off or, whatever it is, however you react. In that are the lessons. In that are the things that you can grow from. How do you do it tactically? Well, I can just say what I do. So like for me now, I meditate so I'm aware of how I'm feeling. And as I meditate for 15 minutes a day, and that makes me more aware of my feelings. And then now I notice like if I'm afraid to do something. So if I'm scared to do something, if I'm like, I think there's no way this is going to work, I think I'm going to die, I'm terrified, what's going to happen to me, I'll be embarrassed, then I know that I have a demon lying there, lying in that thing. And so like quitting my job was a really big one of these things. Like I was terrified to quit my job, like terrified. Like I can't tell you how, my identity's on the line. No one's going to talk to me. I'm going to not have health insurance. I'm going to go broke. I'm going to, like, all of these bad things are going to happen to me. And that told me, like, hey, shit, if I'm afraid of this, I think I should probably go do it because, I need to face my fears. I was terrified to leave San Francisco, which meant I needed to leave San Francisco. I was terrified to even go to an event, to like go to a party alone, just anxious. And so like bit by bit, I was like, okay, if I'm afraid of something, I'm gonna go do it. I call it being opposite Josh, because default Josh does things he's not afraid of. He just does the same shit every day. And opposite Josh does things he's scared of. And so like, as an example with the going out stuff, I still have to go back to like the practices, meditation, therapy, working out. I still get rattled. So like, I was afraid to go out alone. So I go out alone by myself. First time I go out, I was in New York. I went to a nightclub alone, never done that. And I got anxious as fuck. So what did I do? I ended up drinking a shitload, and it was not good. I drank way more than I wanted to. And, then I was like hungover for 2 days. I felt embarrassed, like blah, blah, blah. And so then I went back to my practices, back to meditation, back to therapy, back to working out. Like, why was I feeling anxious? How can I undo feeling anxious? And then I went a second time. I did it again. And then it felt a little bit better. And then I did it a third time. And then it felt a little bit better. And now each time I go, I'm like drinking a lot less. I'm more comfortable. I'm talking to different people. And so I'm just using that as a small example of like using these two things in pairs. So like going and facing a fear, and then using mental or spiritual practices to work through it, or body practices, and then facing the fear again and going back through the cycle. So anyway, I hope this is useful for people. I think it's, I just wanted to share the story because like it's been taking me again like many weeks to do this like budgeting exercise, which I know for like a lot of people out there is really simple. It's like the most obvious thing, and for me it's really hard. But I can literally feel that it's worth it, because some friends are like, just hire an accountant, just do that. And A, I'm not working right now, so I can't afford an accountant. But B, it literally feels better to face these things bit by bit, and I can tell that at the end of it, I'm going to be a way stronger person. I'm going to be more creative. I'm going to, be a better friend. I'm going to be, better in relationships. I'm going to be, have more energy. And so I think that's why you do this stuff. Anyway, that was my, holy shit, there's a 30-minute podcast episode from Josh. I hope that was interesting. Cheers.